Grayson glanced to Weston, who just nodded. "For now, this concerns Captain Passer and the Autolycus." The newly commissioned UES Autolycus was Morgan's new baby, his one true love, and possibly the finest piece of steel he'd ever seen in his life. The Rogue-class destroyer was also probably the last wholly Earth-designed ship that would ever be built, since the Primini had offered to help Earth build a new shipyard to colonial specs in the system. "We want Passer to test the Autolycus in deep space," she said. "If it holds up to our expectations, she and her crew will eventually operate as a long-range recon. As you both know, her weapons don't hold a candle to the Odysseus, but they're nothing to sneeze at either." "Absolutely, Admiral," Passer said with a hint of pride. "Given what we accomplished with the Odyssey, with probably half what the Otter was packing," Weston said, referring to his old destroyed ship, "I'm not one to underestimate the potential of the Rogues, ma'am." "I knew that you wouldn't be." Grayson smiled thinly before looking over to Passer and sliding a flimsy across the desk. "Captain, your orders." Morgan took the device, thumbing it on with his biometrics. A quick read-through of the summary was all he needed before he looked up sharply. "Ma'am?" "You read it correctly, Captain. There's a list of stars in there," she said seriously. "Stars that James Webb had reported anomalies about. We had passed them off as mistakes, natural phenomena, and so forth. But given what we've learned about the enemy and their abilities, we can't afford to do that anymore." "No, ma'am," he said, reading farther. His orders were clear enough, no questions there. He was to take the auto out and examine each of the suspect stars, getting as close as he dared, and return with any intelligence he could gather on those celestial bodies that may harbor the enemy that had invaded Earth. They all knew that the Drazen were still out there, but no one had seen a hint of them in the last year, since the remaining invaders had been wiped out of the immediate solar system. Even their one known stellar base was now empty, with only the solar collectors remaining in the swarm orbit of the star they'd once claimed as their own. That, of course, led to the question of where the hell did the Drazen go? A question every military and political leader on Earth, and in the Primini colonies, wanted answered yesterday. It was one hell of an important assignment, and he had to wonder why they were sending the Otto and not the considerably more powerful Odysseus. Thankfully, that was one question he didn't have to wonder about too long. "Ma'am," he glanced up, "why the Otto?" Grayson sighed, and he noticed Weston shift out of the corner of his eye, which made him all the more curious. "Eric?" Grayson gestured. Weston nodded, speaking after a moment. "One thing we worked out quickly in the last battle is that the Primini power cores have a potentially fatal flaw. Yes, they provide exponentially more power for weapons, gravity, and various other uses, but they also warp space-time and are fueled by planetary masses." Passer nodded. He knew that much. The Primini-built ships could literally run on almost anything. They simply dumped whatever mass they could find into the Singularity core and functioned on the Hawking radiation produced by the natural evaporation of the mass within the Singularity. That meant that a single Primini vessel actually had as much power on tap as the entire planetary society of Earth, and probably a bit more besides. Since they use planetary masses as fuel, they're also easily detectable by gravity detection instruments, Weston said with a sigh. "And much like the old nuclear reactors on blue water Navy ships, you can't turn off a core if you want to sneak around." Morgan suddenly understood exactly why the admittedly underpowered and arguably obsolete Rogue class of ships had never been cancelled. They ran on a more volatile matter-antimatter reactor, far less powerful, but they certainly wouldn't have anywhere near the gravity footprint. "I see. I'm surprised this wasn't in my original brief," he said, curious. "We want this information classified," Grayson said, "which is one reason we're going to intentionally limit your interactions with the Primini." "I thought they were allies, ma'am." "They are, and good ones," she said. "However, we know that the mysterious group that dropped the hammer on them with the Drazen used ships that match Primini specifications in almost every way. We don't know where they got those specs, Captain, and until we do, Earth is holding a few cards close to the vest." "Yes, ma'am." "Once you've cleared the auto for service, we want you to start inspecting the suspect stars," she said. "Be thorough, be sure, but don't get caught. You won't have much backup out there." "Will we have any?" "That's what